This GR Supra was destroyed in a wreck nearly 4 years ago. Then it sat just like this for 3 years until I made the crazy decision to buy it at an auction. And that was nearly 11 months ago. I've been repairing this GR Supra ever since. We completely disassembled it, cut off all the damaged frame, welded factory new frame pieces back on, painted it all red again in my inflatable paint booth, and in the last episode we finally started reassembling this GR Supra from scratch, starting with the interior. And that is where we are today, an interior that's super nice but doesn't really do much. So my goal for this video is to change that. I want to hear this B58 start up. I want to hear this exhaust. I want to drive this thing, but I have no clue if the computers are going to let me drive it or even turn it on without the doors, the hood, or the rear hatch. So let's find out together. My goal is to have every part that you see in front of you on the car by the end of this video. But there is one major issue that is blocking us from doing that. Maybe two issues. If you look at our door jamb here, you might notice there's no door hinges. And if you look at our door hinge, you might notice it bolts in from the inside. And if you look at that bolt hole, you might notice that it's inaccessible with the dash in. So unfortunately, the first thing we're doing in this video is undoing some of the major steps I took in the last video. But don't worry, I'll make it really quick. We're just going to remove the seats, remove the center console, and I'm hoping to keep the entire dash in one big piece, unbolted enough that I can move it back and get access to that bolt hole. Now with the dash slid forward just a little bit, all of the wiring still in place, I think I can reach in, and there's our bolt. That really wasn't too bad. Now here is the second problem. I can't just bolt this on. Look at how much wiggle room is here. That's because you need to be able to line up the door. And for this bottom one, we just had to take off the bottom trim, and we can get that one in place too. Okay, I feel 10 times better having these door hinges in place, but not permanently set yet. We need to put our side skirt on and then put our door on, make sure the body gaps are good, and then bolt those hinges down. There we go. All right, and our body gap is pretty bad. Now I say before we keep messing with this side is we go put on the other side, because that side should not have changed at all, and that should tell us exactly how it should look. You know, the door's probably not even gonna close with the dash here, because this side has the door panel on, the other side did not. But we're gonna try it anyway. Working on cars solo, always so much fun. Oh. Yeah, dash is in the way now. So we just need to take the door panel off. I'll probably have to buy a new one or a used one. It's pretty ripped up here. Maybe I'll drive with it for a little bit, but in the end I'll have to replace it. But for now, without the door panel, we should be able to shut our door. Honestly, the door gap's a little bigger than I thought it was gonna be. So maybe they are pretty similar. Yeah, I can see it's close here and close here, but a big gap here. So we just need to move the door back just a little bit. So issue number one, fix door hinges, put the dash back in place. It's not bolted down yet. Issue number two, our airbag control module. Make sure you bolt this down and plug it in without the battery connected. I'm sure if you guys are watching me, you probably also watch Matt Armstrong, and you might have seen the video of him blowing up some airbags because he turned this over while it was connected and the battery had power. So battery's disconnected, this is unplugged, I'm gonna bolt it down and then plug it in. All right, a couple hours later, I have an update for you. The interior is almost back together. I did it off camera because obviously you've already seen me do it. Our center console is back together with our airbag module in its home. Our dash is put back into place with our door hinges where they should be. Now, I need to bolt the seats down, which means I need to connect the battery so I can raise the seats up. This is the first time I'm going to be connecting this battery with the airbag module plugged in. Let's hope it doesn't blow up the airbags. Here we go. All right, battery's in, everything's lighting up, and the airbags didn't blow up. Let me bolt down these seats, and we will again have a reassembled interior that as of now, I have no reason to ever take apart again. Now, unfortunately, we have some more boring stuff to do, so I'm just going to do it very quickly off camera and show you the result. I have to put on all of these rubber grommets, all of these brake line clips, so I'm going to make it real quick. So here's some before and afters on the wheel wells, the frame rails, the engine bay, a lot of plastic mounting clips that needed to get put on. Okay, now I didn't get all of the plastic mounting clips and all of the rubber grommets on, but I have a very, very good start to that. Honestly, I'm just ready to start putting some of these bigger pieces on and start feeling like I'm making some progress towards the end goal of this video. Now, if I were to follow the way I disassembled the car, that way I don't have to redo it like I just did the interior, the last major component I took off was the gas tank. Before we put the fuel tank on, brake lines and fuel lines need to go on above that. So let's start with the brake lines. We have two major brake lines that go from the front of the vehicle to the rear, and it's just one for each side. One of the brake lines has a bigger fitting, and that goes on the front. You can tell because the ABS module has a bigger hole on the front, so that's how I know the starting point for that one at least. So I can clip that one in, follow it to the rear, and then start the second one and follow that one to the rear. Now, actually, the brake lines were the only thing that we needed to do. I thought I was going to do the fuel lines first, but apparently the fuel lines attach to the bottom of the fuel tank, not the top. Now, luckily, installing the tank should be pretty easy. We have two straps and one nut, and the fuel tank is pretty light because we drained it out before we dropped it out. So I can just bench it into place and get one of the straps started, and then we should be good to go. Now, last time I started the brake lines at the front, and I ran into issues. This time, I'm starting back here. All right, now I know I said fuel lines, but it's fuel line and evap hose. It feels good finally making some progress on the outside of this car, so let's keep it going with the fuel filler neck. Now we have some fancy stuff related to emissions here. Now, technically the last step for the rear of the car is the rear subframe, which has literally everything on it, the brakes, the suspension, everything's already on that rear subframe. So it's pretty heavy, which is why I'm not going to do that until I have a lot of the front assembled to make sure it doesn't tip over on me like it did last time. Oh, shit. Oh boy. Now, when that happened, I didn't have any of the interior in, so it's possible that it doesn't tip over on me, but it is still rear heavy, even with all the interior, so we're gonna do it last. Which brings us to some more work in the engine bay. Now, I didn't know this, but unfortunately, the frame pieces I bought did not come with any of the studs welded or riveted in place already. And the worst part is I don't have a stud welder that works with big studs that are that size, and I don't have a riveter that works with stud rivets. So unfortunately, it's not going to be 100% factory. It's going to be the same exact socket, just going to be a bolt instead of a stud, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to put 3 M6 riv nuts here for the AC dryer bracket. I'm going to put a riv nut over here for our power line bracket, and I'm going to put 2 M6 rev nuts here in the wheel well for these power line mounting points as well. Back up to the front, we can get this bracket on now. And now the power wires that come from the battery all the way to right here are finally fully secured. Only a couple more things to do before we put on our ABS pump and module, our brake fluid reservoir, and all of the front brake lines, one of them being this bracket here. Okay, we are very, very close to actually starting the assembly of our engine bay, but this wire routing needs to be correct because I don't want to have to take it all apart to redo it. So I don't bore you, here is a nice before and after on that wire routing. For how little of a difference that made, it took a long time to find where all of that went. My videos didn't show good routing, my photos didn't show good routing, just kind of had to figure it out. But we should make a huge dent in how this engine bay looks. We have 3 big plastic pieces that go around the back side of the engine bay here. Then we can get the brake fluid reservoir, the ABS pump and module, and all of the front brake lines on next. Then there are 2 heat shields next to the downpipe. Then we have like 10 giant power wires in this other corner here. So another thing, on top of there being no riv nuts and no riv studs on these new frame pieces, is that places where bolts go are unthreaded. So we're gonna have to tap them ourselves. Question for somebody in the comments who does frame repair. Are you supposed to tap every single one of these holes? Or are you just intended to kind of send the bolt through and it'll self-tap itself? It is aluminum, it is soft, but we're gonna go the safe route. We're gonna tap them ourselves. That way we know it's done right. Now this top piece here you can see is broken half. It's supposed to come all the way over Unfortunately, this is on national back order. There's no estimated shipping date. So as soon as I do get one of these, I will replace it. But for now, we're gonna just have to live with this. Now, I've been thinking about how I wanted to fix an issue for a while, and I've come to the conclusion that besides buying the right tool, this is how we're gonna do it. These fuel lines are supposed to have another mount right here. All of the mounts previously, I've been able to use bolts for. This one I cannot. And I don't have a riv stud tool, I just have a riv nut tool. So what we're gonna do, since I can't use a bolt, because the hose goes right where the bolt's supposed to go, is we're gonna use a riv nut, and I'm gonna cut the head off of this bolt, and we're gonna red Loctite this bolt into the riv nut and just use it as a riv stud. Long story short, I'm just making my own riv studs. Let me know if you think this is gonna hold. We're basically banking on the fact that hopefully this red Loctite will not let this stud back out. We are on the last little bit of this firewall. It's gonna go really quick from here. And then we get to do the fun stuff, the subframe, the steering, the suspension, the brakes, the parts that it's going to start feeling like a car again. I'm excited. So let's wrap up this engine bay with the ECU bracket, some fuel lines, the steering shaft, and then some AC and some coolant lines. I did look it up, and this line is bent right here. It's supposed to be straight, and that's why I can't get it into place. Who would have thought? So I already ordered a new one. It should be here in 3 days, they said, probably a week. For now, I'm gonna take all of these hoses off, and we'll continue on with the front subframe. The good side of this is, on top of buying this AC line, the sensor down here is broken, and the AC line I bought was used, and it comes with it. Super exciting. Time for the front subframe. I've personally put this thing on like 10 times when I was test fitting the frames to make sure everything lined up, but this should be the last time. Hopefully we never have to take this off. It'll be a bad day. I mean, something terrible happened, but it's on for now. Let's move on to the steering rack. For our steering rack, we have a little bit of an issue. The one that was already on the car is very broken. The motor's no longer attached. The steering rack itself is broken in half. That side is bent. This side is straight, however. So I bought a used one. Brand new outer tie rods we'll be using. We need to get this inner tie rod, and we need to get this plastic piece as well. So let's start by disassembling our good one, because this is already broken, this is already broken, so it's gonna be good to learn on this before we take off our good pieces. So now we should be done with our old one here. I did want to confirm before we continued, this side does move, just needed a little more leverage. Good to go here. So let's get this inner tie rod on. I'll watch this boot. If this clamp isn't holding nice enough and it comes off, I'll switch to a metal zip tie. But next up, we can get our plastic cover back on with this wire. And then this plastic top cover too. Wire goes here, plugs in here. Now we just gotta do both the outer tie rods, and we can bolt this into the front subframe. And now we have one good steering rack made out of 2 used bad ones. Now before I tighten this down, I wanna make sure I can get my steering in. Now we can tighten the bolts. Now we can plug this in and route these wires. And then there's 3 bolts that holds this bracket to the subframe. So our front subframe is in and our steering rack is in. Everything's working with the steering rack from the steering wheel. Now we can wrap up the front suspension with the struts, the hubs, the upper and lower control arms, and then of course connect it to the tie rods. However, I'm not 100% sure that my struts were not bent in the accident, so I went ahead and bought some used ones. Now, coincidentally, our used ones did come with H&R lowering springs. However, I've heard a lot of good things about Swift lowering springs, so we're gonna switch out our H&R lowering springs for our Swift lowering springs. After we get the lowering spring switched out, we're also gonna switch out the struts from my hubs, and then we can bolt those into the car. Now we can get our front suspension bolted on. First, there is a bracket here that holds some wiring. Then we can jack up and bolt in our struts from the top. Once that's bolted in, we can connect our tie rod, the lower control arm, and the upper control arm, and get all of that torqued down. After all that's sorted out, we can route and plug in the wiring that connects to the strut and tighten down the brake line too. And then of course we repeat that one more time on the other side. Bolt on the bracket, then the strut, the tie rod, the upper control arm, and the lower control arm. Torque them all to spec with an impact because tight is tight, then plug in all of the wiring. Now while I tighten this brake line, let me just say, I know that I'm supposed to tighten all of these bolts when we're at ride height and not full droop like this. I'm just kind of lazy. But just so we're all on the same page, just in case you didn't know, these rubber bushings should be tightened at ride height, not full droop. Now we all know, and I know I'm doing it wrong. We're all gonna move on though. Now to wrap up the front suspension, all we need is our sway bar. And on that note, 95% of the steering, brakes, and suspension on the front half of the car is done. Everything brake related for the front is tight, but we need brake fluid. Everything for steering is tight, however we need an alignment. And everything for the suspension is tight, but I'm missing the ride height sensors. But the way that the front end sits right now, I think we'd be ready to drive it. Before I put the rear subframe on, I don't really want to deal with these wires dangling around. So I'm going to put on our rear plastic bumper piece and get all of this wire off the ground. So next up, we can go back to the rear end and get the rear subframe with all of the brakes and suspension already attached to it. This one's going to be tricky to do solo. We'll see if I can even do it. I know when I was taking it out, I kind of just dropped it down with two jacks because it wasn't balanced. However, I'm not going to be able to just jack it up really quick to get it into place. So we might have to do a little MacGyvering to get it to go in, or I might have to call in reinforcements. We'll see.
Then we can just wrap up the rear subframe install with the wiring. There's wires for the rear diff, the brake pads, the e-brake, and the suspension.
All right, everything is tight and plugged in for the rear suspension and the brakes. That was a little tough to do solo. Luckily, I have two jacks, so I had one on the front of the rear diff, one on the rear of the rear diff, so I could raise it up evenly. Now, the next major component to go in is the engine and transmission. We have a little work to do on the engine before we put it in, but before we get to the fun part of that, I want to wrap up the rear end with some heat shielding, only because I know as soon as I get that engine and transmission mated and start putting it in, I'm not going to want to stop for heat shielding in the rear end. So I'm going to do it now. Next up, we have a couple things we need to do before we mate the engine and transmission back together and put it in the car. Saying the words "put the engine back in the car" is like surreal. It's super fun, super exciting. We actually have far less to do to the engine than I thought. I had a whole box of stuff that I thought we had to do, but it turns out we have two things. One, AC compressor. Last time I bought the wrong used one. This time I got the right one. Number two, fuel pressure sensor. I didn't notice it was broken last time. Caught it on the engine rebuild, bought a used one, old one out, new one on, plug it in. Same concept for the AC compressor, we're gonna bolt it on. I have two brand new AC lines that connect to it, and then we can put on our belt. Here's the current plan. I don't like working on the engine while it's on the engine hoist. I don't want to be underneath it, putting a starter on while it's dangling from chains. So I like to prep everything to keep that time as short as possible. I'm going to put the engine in the car with the transmission connected, the starter on, and the downpipe on. That's how I pulled it, so that's how I'm putting back in. So I'm not gonna put it on the engine hoist and then get those things ready. We're gonna get those things ready and then put the engine on the hoist. So we need to switch the O2 sensors from the old catted downpipe to our new catless downpipe. The old transmission mount broke, so we need to get the new transmission mount on. And our torque converter is super filthy, so I'm going to wipe it down, get it filled with transmission fluid. Okay, this is actually pretty full already, so I'm not gonna add too much more. Because if I add a bunch more, it's just gonna spill out when I put it in the transmission. But when you fill one of these, fill it up and then give her a spin. Make sure you get it seated all the way back. You saw it kind of stopped once, and then I had to kind of lift it up, twist it to get it seated all the way back fully. And like I said, if you fill it up too much, it's just gonna leak out. But better to have too much and leak a little bit out now and not have enough in later. But at this point, downpipe ready, transmission mount ready, and torque converter mounted in the transmission. Let's get the engine on a hoist. All right, one last thing. It's gonna be easier to do the engine oil filter now rather than later, so why not? And now it's finally time to put our engine on a hoist and mate it up with our transmission. I can't get over how weird this feels. This engine's been on this stand for like 9 or 10 months, and to think that within the next week or so, this will be running, maybe driving. Let's get to work. And we immediately ran into our first issue of reinstalling our engine back in our GR Supra. The bracket I made to pull the engine, well, when I made it, the valve cover was broken and not in the way, so I made it too short, because now with the valve cover on, I can't get a bolt through. So I gotta go run and buy some more flat bar, cut it to be 2 inches taller, and then mimic the bolt pattern on the bottom, and then drill a new hole on top. And just like that, old bracket versus new, we should have plenty of room for our bolt and our chains. I did try to take this sensor out to make some room, but it did not work, so I'm gonna put this back in so we don't get anything dropped in our engine. Now, with that sorted out, we should be able to get the engine off the engine stand, made our transmission together, maybe start a couple of them torque converter bolts before I tighten down the bell housing bolt, then finish up the torque converter bolts, then get our starter on, then get on our downpipe. All right, now love it or hate it, not getting a torque wrench in there, but I will be putting on blue thread locker. All right, looks like I'm gonna have to lift up the engine to put the downpipe on, but I think that's the last thing before we put this thing back in the car. Actually, almost forgot the transmission cooler lines that run obviously from the transmission all the way to the front to the transmission cooler. Obviously I could have put that on later, but now it's fine. Now, since I'm going to be lifting the engine and transmission together, the load balancer needs to be pretty much all the way back to keep this thing as level as possible. And this is gonna be so easy to put in just because there's no front end of the car. It's literally just gonna slide straight back. What issues could I possibly have? And on that note, I don't think there's any more stalling. Let's get it in. Now I'm gonna go underneath, get the transmission mounts, the engine mounts, and then we'll go over the list from there. This thing has come so far. It's weird making this progress. I'm so used to 11 months to disassemble it, repair the frame, and paint it. I know that's a lot, but it never felt closer to being finished. Even the interior, when we got the interior done, it was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I could sit in it now. I could turn it on. It says hello Shawnzey, but it never felt like huge progress. This feels like huge progress. The suspension, the brakes, the steering, this is technically a rolling chassis. Even before I got the engine and transmission in, there's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. I gotta bleed the brakes. I gotta fill the oil. I gotta put the spark plugs in. I got a lot of wiring to do. That's probably what's next. But seeing the GR Supra, the way it currently sits, gives me like a renewed excitement. It gives me a renewed feeling that it is finishable. It's starting to look like a car that is plausible to run and drive, and that's exciting. I feel like we have a lot of hurdles left. I don't know if it's gonna let me start it with an airbag module from a different vehicle that's been popped. I don't know if it's gonna let me start it with half of the wiring missing for the bumpers, the front and rear bumpers, the hatch. I don't know. There's so many mysteries left, but huge progress nonetheless. Hi, it's me from the future. Things are about to get crazy pretty quick with the GR Supra, so I figured I'd just pop in real quick, just let you know. Subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing, all of those things help the channel a lot. So if you have a second to do any one of those things, I'm deeply appreciative. There is, however, a new way to help support the channel rather than trying to convince the YouTube algorithm that my content is worth showing to people. And that is this shirt or this hoodie or this phone case, or maybe even some stickers if you want. That's right, I finally decided to start a merch website. Even though I'm a pretty small channel, me and the wife have been coming up with t-shirt designs for quite some time, and they are all in the works. For now, I only have one shirt and one hoodie design on the website, and that's just a ShawnzeyRacing logo on the front and the back. However, I have 3 different designers working on 6 different designs for future shirt and hoodies. I really want my merch to be good, so I hired 3 different designers to make the same 6 designs so I can pick which ones are best and hopefully which designer is best and work with them in the future. That being said, if anybody in the community designs t-shirts, preferably related to automotive, hit me up on either Instagram or email me, and I'd love to try to work with you. The t-shirts are Bella and Canvas, and I picked that one out of the 3 brands that I tried because I liked them the most. Obviously, it was soft, it was stretchy, it felt good to wear. The designs are directly printed onto the shirt, so you don't have like a big piece of vinyl on your back and it makes you all sweaty. I hate that, so I picked the best brand I could. I picked the best type of printing I could, obviously just because I care about the quality. I don't want to skimp on the brand, skimp on how it's printed, and then you guys hate the shirts. That's just not what I want in any way, shape, or form. But like I said before, I have 6 different designs being worked on right now, so if you guys want to wait to see those 6 designs before you buy a shirt, totally get it. Those are coming soon. Beyond all of that, I just really want you guys to know how much I appreciate you. You guys are so supportive in the comments. You guys are reason number 1 why I love this YouTube channel and I love making these videos. So before we continue on, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on this journey. All right, sorry that took so long. I had a lot to say, but let's get back to it. The current goal is to get this engine running. So in order to do that, I probably need the throttle body on. I know these engines can technically run without the throttle body because of how much control they have over the valves, but I'd feel better with it on anyway. So in order to get the throttle body on, we need the intake on. And before we can get the intake on, we need to make sure that all of the coolant lines, the AC lines, and the wiring is all sorted out underneath the intake manifold. Then I decided to start putting on some of the front coolant lines, the AC condenser, and the overflow tanks just to make sure I have every coolant hose I need in the right spot. After hours of looking through hose diagrams and just putting stuff together as much as I could, I finally figured out that I'm missing a hose. I'm missing a hose that goes from this hose to the condenser and up to here. So that sucks, but we found the problem and it's right here. We can continue on putting on our intake and we can put that hose on later. Here we go. Everything's coming together nicely now. All that goes over there. This goes over the front. Okay, everything seems to be in place. Let's get our intake manifold torqued down. Oh boy, intake manifold's tight. Wow, that's really soft engine mounts. Engine mount's supposed to be that soft? Interesting. I guess it is, you know, gonna be a super balanced engine. Maybe we don't need super stiff engine mounts.
Okay, let's speed this process up a little bit with a voiceover. This is taking too long to get to the crazy stuff, and believe me, there is some crazy stuff. So let's get this throttle body on, organize the wiring and get the ECU bracket back bolted in place. Then on the other side of the engine, we can do the spark plugs and coil packs, along with the power wire that goes to the starter and another one that goes to the alternator. On the front of the engine, we have a vacuum line and the charge pipe that goes from the turbo to the throttle body. After that, we can go back and wrap up the wiring with the DME or the ECU and the power control module. And last but certainly not least, we can put on our air intake box and the tube that goes to the turbo.
Okay, we're ticking down the list to start this engine for the first time. Next up is fill our oil. Now with the oil filled, we can go underneath the car and change our transmission fluid. Now I know this car only has 3,000 miles, but I want to play it safe, change the transmission fluid and the filter.
Oh boy, this got water in it. Oh, maybe the fluid is just that color. I can't tell yet. This fluid is such a weird color. Doesn't look right to me. We'll find out when we drop the pan, I guess. Oh my God. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. This is not good. Not good, boys. I might have to buy a transmission. This is not good. No way. Boy. boys, this is not good.
Well, this just took a giant turn for the worse. Not good. It did not get any better. The first thing that was weird is I took out the fill plug first and nothing came out. If this transmission is properly filled and you take off the fill plug when the car's not running, some of the fluid should come out because you fill it when it's running and some of the fluid is going to be cycling. Clue number 2 that we had an issue, I took out the drain plug and water came out first, which is crazy. How did we have water in the transmission? We didn't even have water in the engine, even though we had a broken valve cover and the oil cap was off. But somehow we had water in the transmission. So obviously I took off our oil pan and I noticed one bolt was really wobbly, and it's because of this. The corner of our transmission snapped. So the transmission mounts broke. Everything was just swinging around and banging around down there, and it broke the corner of the transmission. Some good news is I'm fairly confident that no water is actually cycled through the transmission. I'm fairly confident in that because the torque converter had straight transmission fluid. I literally saw all the fluid in there. Some of it leaked out. So I don't think any water is in the actual transmission. I think this corner broke. All of the transmission fluid leaked out through that corner. And just over 3 years of sitting outside, water got in that crack somehow. But that's my best guess. The way I see it is we have 3 options. Option 1, we buy a used transmission for $2,000. And I don't really want to do that. Option 2, we pull the transmission out, I take it to a shop, they weld this tab back on. Option 3 is we get a little hacky, a little bit of hack, and I JB weld it. All this little corner is doing is holding one oil pan bolt. That's it. So if we can JB weld it and it seals and it holds the oil pan flush and that seals, that tab or that corner is doing its job. So because I think the transmission is still good and all we need to do is keep that corner sealed and not leak any transmission fluid out, I'm gonna be a little hacky here and use JB Weld. If that doesn't work, then we'll probably have to buy a used one. I'm not super happy with the fact that my 3,000 mile Supra is going to have JB Weld on it. Probably happier with that than buying a transmission for $2,000 right now. So we're going to try it. Okay, I went and picked up some JB Weld. After reading what they claim, I think it'll work as long as everything goes well. It says 5,000 PSI of strength, 550 degrees of temperature, but it does say 15 hours of cure time. So we need to do it now so that we're ready to go as soon as possible. Here is our broken piece. Now, luckily this does like sit into place nicely all on its own. So I'm going to JB Weld inside the crack, put this on, JB Weld inside the crack, JB Weld outside of the crack, and then I'm going to bolt the transmission pan on so it's in the correct spot. And then guess what? After those initial JB Welds and it's bolted down, I'm going to probably JB Weld on top of it even more. All right, I am confident in the JB Weld product, but I don't know if I'm confident in sealing that kind of application. It wasn't like it was a flat piece that I just stuck in there and it was easy to get to. It was all sorts of different curvature. It was like 7 different sides because it was so curved, and it was the bottom piece where the oil pan seals to. Long story short, I don't know if it's gonna seal, but $10 of JB Weld to try to avoid a $2,000 used transmission, definitely worth it in my book. Now there is other options. Obviously I don't need the entire transmission, I just need the case. So maybe I just buy a case and I have to move everything over. I've never built a transmission, so that sounds difficult, but if it saves me $1,000, definitely gonna do it. 3 hours later, the JB Weld is still tacky. Obviously it says it needs 24 hours to be fully cured. Looking at it, I see really good coverage. I don't see any cracks on the outside, and I covered it as best I could on the inside. For now, we have plenty to do, starting with our brakes. I could be wrong, but I think we need brake pressure to start the car, so I'm going to bleed our brakes. I'm super excited. This is going to be my first time using a pneumatic air bleeder. Usually I do things old school and have someone push the brake pedal while I crack open the bleed nipple. This time, I'm getting fancy. I'm going to use compressed air to push the brake fluid through the reservoir, through the ABS pump, through the lines, all the way to the brake calipers. The reason why I'm going this extra step is 1, I don't need a helper, I can do it myself. And 2, I think with these futuristic cars and their futuristic ABS pumps, you kind of need to do it to get a good bleed. so we can fill our bleeder with brakes, find the correct cap that matches our brake reservoir, hook up the hose to the new cap, hook up the air to our pneumatic bleeder, set our pressure to about 40 psi, and then you always start with the farthest caliper. So the brake reservoir is on the front left, we're going to the back right, and we crack open this nipple until we see no air and only brake fluid coming through. Then you just work your way farthest to closest, so we go back left, front right, and then we finish it off with the front left. All I gotta say is, wow, that is the fastest, most efficient, easiest brake bleed with the best result that I've ever done. If you ever had any doubt or question on whether you should buy one of these things to blade your bleaks, if you ever had any question or doubt on whether you should buy one of these to bleed your brakes, get rid of it and buy one. This is the best feeling brake pedal I've ever had, and it was the fastest brake bleed I've ever done. Next up on our goal to start this engine for the first time in 4 years is something on the interior. Again, I don't know how much I need to do to start this engine. We're just gonna try to do everything that I can currently do to make sure it goes smoothly. And currently we are missing one airbag on our interior, and that's the driver's side knee airbag. Like many other parts on this GR Supra, I ordered 2 left side or driver's side knee airbags, and both times I got the wrong side or the right side. I guess there's just not very many people rebuilding GR Supras from scratch and ordering knee airbags and ordering frame pieces. Apparently it's just me. So driver's side knee airbag, plug it in, bolt it in, and then we can finish off the driver's side knee area with this plastic piece. Another thing that I just don't know if we need to start our engine is our gas cap. It's got a wire here to make sure that it's closed, so I'm gonna assume that they want it closed to start the engine. And while we're here, we can put fuel in because I think we're about ready to start it. Now there is one more thing we need to do before we start this car. I don't know if I've talked about this in this series yet, but in order to tune these newer BMWs, you have to unlock your ECU. As of now, only Femto does it, and you have to send it to Finland. I took another route. I paid a company to fly over there, tune it, and fly it back. That company is gonna remain nameless because I think everyone can figure it out if they want to. It is like $1,600 to pay this company to do it for you. I mailed them my ECU, and they immediately mailed it back to me. So unless they flew that same night, got it tuned, and flew back immediately the next day and mailed it back to me, they either A, didn't do it, or B, it was already done and they took my money anyway. I emailed this company many times over many months, and they never replied to me. So we are going to try to tune our ECU, and if it's not tunable, I'm probably gonna be a little angry. If my ECU is tunable, I'm just gonna forget that it ever happened, even though I'm 99% sure they didn't do anything with my ECU. If it's tunable, I'm happy. MHD has an unlock check function. Lord, please be unlocked. Because if not, I spent $1,600 to a company that did absolutely nothing 10 months ago, and I might not be able to charge it back. Contacting the DME. Okay, DME could not be found. Make sure ignition is on. Okay, scanner's coming out. Let's see if this can detect anything or tell us of any issues. Okay, it's scanned. Did it find the DME? Okay, bad news number 1. I do not see our engine control module in here, our DME. However, we have so many faults. Hold on. Look at all these faults. Okay, we're gonna erase all of them. We're gonna start fresh. So let's quick erase. Okay, so we erased everything. Obviously more faults came back, but we cleared out a lot of them. Let's see if we can rescan this and have it find our DME, because last time it did not. Okay, so we scanned again. No DME. Let me disconnect the battery, try to reseat all of the DME wires, and go from there. Disconnect the battery, reconnected the ECU. Car is on in diagnostic mode. Can we connect to the DME? We cannot. I'm gonna guess that our battery's too dead. I have a better idea. Let's just test our battery. Connect the negative, connect the positive. 950 cold cranking amps. Battery's good. Okay, I think I found something. Let me show you. This is our mini airbag that disconnects the battery from the starter to prevent the engine from running once you're in an accident. Earlier, I said that I tested to see if this fuse was good, and I thought it was good because we have continuity. Once that's beeping, it means that there is a connection from this post down here to our battery terminal. We have continuity. We have some sort of a connection. I made the mistake of assuming that meant that the fuse did not blow. But if we switch to voltage, you can see our battery has 12.2 volts. But when I test down here, we only have 1 volt. So we have 12 volts at the battery, and we only have 1 volt going to the front of the car. So I learned a lesson here. Continuity does not always mean that we have a good flow of voltage in amps. All right, check this out. Here's what I've learned. Here's our post that connects to the battery. Here's the wire that goes down and connects to a distribution block that goes to the front of the car. These should be really sturdily connected, and I can wiggle this. And here's an even more in-depth look. I drilled out the rivets holding this plastic cover on, and you can see these wires are no longer one. The explosive inside of here pushed it out. So it's just tapping it to make contact, but if you look at it, I can kind of squeeze them back together and make them one wire again. So here we go to try to make some temporary progress. I will order a new one of these, don't worry. But I bent this bracket back into an L shape, squeeze these two back together. We'll see if we can put this back together now and see if we can get some power to our ECU. Okay, let's see if that made a difference here. Obviously, I still expect to have continuity here. Continuity, battery voltage, 12.6, and down here, also 12.6. All right, let's see if we can connect to our ECU now, or our DME. No dice. Okay, a little bit of an update. I've tried lots of things, shown you most of them. I bought a new battery. Even though our battery tested good, I bought another one. I felt more comfortable having a battery that wasn't sitting drained for 3 years. I know the battery tested good. I know it was supplying power to the car, but just in my head, I couldn't get it out of my head that maybe the battery just wasn't up to snuff, even though the battery tested good. I bought a new battery. Obviously, that didn't fix it, but I'll feel a lot better knowing that my car has a new battery when I'm out and about anyway. I guess before I bought a battery, I also started testing to make sure I was getting power everywhere, and that's when I saw that, yes, that pyro fuse on the battery terminal did blow up, and I just had continuity, and that gave me a false positive that it was actually good when it was just barely making contact. So we fixed that temporarily. I still have to order that connector. The reason why I mentioned that we were testing power is I followed it all the way up and all the way to this power control module that you see here. I could verify that we were getting power to that power control module, but I couldn't find any spots where we were getting power out. So I called Toyota. They didn't have any in stock, but the parts guy told me that there was only one in the entire country, so I ordered it to be safe. It was only $60, so I played it safe and ordered it before I had to try to buy a used one and end up with the same situation that I'm currently in. Now, these are not serviceable. They are not supposed to be opened, so it's not very easy to open them. I pried a lot, and then I ended up just having to cut it off anyway. The top plate just came off in a bunch of pieces. Now, inside of this power control module is 13 fuses. And guess what? One of them's blown. I can test continuity on all of them except for this 10 amp right in the middle. It's blown. So I feel way better now that I've already ordered that part. I feel way better destroying this one because it had a blown fuse. But is that our smoking gun? I don't know. I see two issues with this. One, I have a 1 in 13% chance that that fuse is causing all of our issues. I mean, there's 12 other good fuses in there. What are the odds that that one 10 amp fuse is making our ECU not communicate? Issue number two is there's only one of these in all of the United States apparently. So if I plug in the new one and it pops that same fuse, that's bad. So here's what we need to do. We need to verify that that one 10 amp fuse is our issue and two, doesn't pop again. So it seems like a really good time for me to learn how to use a soldering iron, melt the old fuse off, put a new fuse on, because I can't mess up the circuit board any more than it already is. All right, well, here goes nothing. I have no clue what I'm doing. We're gonna melt the old one off, add some flux if we need to. Now forgive me because I have no clue what I'm doing, but our bad fuse right in the middle. I soldered a new fuse onto the back because I have no clue on soldering. but I could not melt the old one off. I have no clue why. I soldered a new one to the back of it. Now, unfortunately, with that fuse soldered onto the back, it doesn't fit into the container. So we're just gonna have to plug everything in without the latches. This is gonna be very, very crude. This technically maybe is a repaired power control module. I wish I could have replaced the fuse and put it in the thing, but I have no clue if any other piece of this is broken. We're just gonna hope that we get some sort of good result here as is. Okay, now I'm gonna leave you here to watch to see if anything sets on fire. I'm gonna go plug in our battery. I'm gonna flip this over. Our fuse is gone. Oh my God, the fuse fell off. The fuse fell off the back of the thing. All right, battery's disconnected. I'm gonna try to solder the fuse on again because I failed last time. All right, attempt 2 of seeing if we can communicate with our DME. The fuse did not break off this time. Everything's plugged in. Let's hope that fuse doesn't pop and we can communicate with our DME and we would have this issue completely solved. That I hear the valve. Oh, okay, I think that's it. I hear the I'm so excited I can't think of what it's called. The eccentric shaft motor. I just heard the eccentric shaft motor moving. I can't, if that's, the fuse did not pop. Hold on, before I get too excited. Every time I've connected this battery, when we haven't been able to communicate to the DME, everything turns on immediately. Everything is not turning on immediately. And I heard the eccentric shaft motor moving. We can go back to what we were originally trying to do. Use MHD to see if our ECU is unlocked. I'm so excited. I need to not be excited because if this isn't fixed, it will be devastating. We are getting so many more warnings. Okay, unlock check, please. Femto unlock with MHD plus. Yes! Okay, our ECU was actually unlocked. I don't know if the company did it. It might have been previous unlocked by the previous owner, but I honestly don't care at this point. Our ECU is communicating and our ECU is unlocked. I want to put transmission fluid in and see if our JB Weld is going to hold fluid, because if it does, I'm starting this car. We fixed our DME. We fixed our communications. Please let this transmission hold fluid. All the fluid you see dripping is just dripping out of the fill plug because it sucks to fill. You know what? I'm going to try. These bottles are nice, but I bought this syringe. I'm going to try a syringe. Oh God, if this transmission repair holds, I'll be so happy. Oh yeah, this syringe is my new favorite. Wow, that went so much faster with that syringe. Okay, we're coming out of the fill plug. Where's my fill plug? Okay. Okay, transmission has the initial fill. We did, I think, 4 quarts. It was coming out of the fill plug, but it's not full yet. You need to get this thing up to temperature, shift through the gears, and then fill it again until it comes out of the fill plug. I'll do that once we're heating up the radiator and checking the cooling system. I just want some fluid in here for our first start. Now we have a catless downpipe with no exhaust, and we don't have a tune, and we don't have coolant. I don't know if this car is gonna run. I don't know if it's gonna run good, but I need to try to start this thing at this point. So here we go. Let's see what we got here. I'm kind of nervous to push this button. That was the loudest car. That thing is so loud. The microphone was just maxed out. I couldn't hear myself yelling. That was loud. Obviously, we have a full exhaust for it. Oh my God. 11 months. 11 months. So exciting. Ah, that's the feeling, you guys. That's the feeling I chase. Those first starts are so good. Ah, the dopamine, the adrenaline. That was the loudest car ever. No fluid under the transmission so far. No fluid under the engine so far. That was nuts. I just can't wait to drive this thing. I wanted to drive it in this video. Surprise, I'm not driving it in this video. I'm waiting on 2 separate parts. One of them being the power control module that I jerry-rigged with some solder and a 10 amp fuse. Another coolant hose so we can actually put on the radiator. So I know I said we were gonna have the exhaust and the drive shaft and the radiator and everything on this video, but I'm gonna take this giant win of getting this thing started, and I just hope you guys can feel my energy, because it's up there. So I appreciate each and every single one of you for watching this crazy GR Supra journey. Subscribe. Do not miss the next video, where we will probably, very, very likely drive this thing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.